All right, let's jump right into something well, it's a really puzzling modern health mystery. We're talking about something happening with young men, a generation that you'd think would be at the absolute peak of their physical health. So, what's going on? Let's get into it. So, I want to start with just one number, 21.48%. Now, what is that? Well, according to a huge international study, that's the slice of sexually active young men, we're talking guys between 18 and 35, who reported dealing with some form of erectile dysfunction. Yeah, 21.48%. So, that leads to the big question, right? Why? Why are more than 1 in 5 young men who should be in their prime facing this? I mean, the researchers who did this study even called this number alarmingly high. And they're right. It really sets the stage for what is honestly a very modern mystery. Okay, so when you start digging into this, one topic comes up again and again: the rise of internet pornography. It's kind of impossible to ignore. So that's where we're going to start our investigation, exploring this potential link. But here's where things get really interesting, because it's not as simple as you might think. The study found it's not really about how much time someone spends watching. On one hand, you've got what they call porn consumption time. That's just the raw minutes per week. But on the other hand, you have something called problematic pornography consumption. Now, this is different. It measures the pattern. Things like feeling conflicted about it, or maybe using it even when it's causing problems in your life. So the key takeaway here, it's the how, not just the how much. And this chart, wow, it just lays it all out perfectly. What you're seeing is the rate of ED, but it's broken down by how problematic that consumption is. For the guys with the lowest scores for problematic use, the rate is around 13%. But get this, for the guys in the highest group, that number skyrockets to over 34%. That's not a small jump. The link is right there, and it's statistically significant. But, it's never just one thing, is it? The picture is way more complex. The study found other really powerful factors at play. For instance, feeling a lot of performance pressure, that increases the odds by 1.3 times. And check this out, being single or being in a brand new relationship more than doubles the odds. And the biggest one, finding real-world intimacy less arousing than porn, that bumps the odds up by a factor of 2.34. So this tells us loud and clear, psychology and what's happening in your relationships are absolutely huge pieces of this puzzle. Okay, so we've got a really strong correlation, but correlation isn't causation, right? So the next logical question is, why? What's the mechanism here? To even begin to understand that, we have to go a little deeper. We need to look at what neuroscience is telling us about what's actually happening inside the brain. And there's this fascinating study out of the University of Cambridge that gives us some major clues. Researchers were actually looking at brain activity, and they found that for men with compulsive sexual behaviors, when they looked at explicit stuff, 3 specific brain regions lit right up. You've got the ventral striatum, which is basically our reward and motivation hub. Then there's the dorsal anterior cingulate, which is all about craving. And finally, the amygdala, which handles emotional significance. And here's the kicker. These are the exact same areas that go wild in the brains of drug addicts when they see things related to their drug of choice. This brings us to a really key idea from addiction science called incentive motivation. And it boils down to this. There's a big difference between wanting something and liking it. Think about it. In addiction, the intense craving, the wanting, just grows and grows and grows, even if the actual pleasure you get from it, the liking, is staying the same or maybe even going down. And that Cambridge study, it found the exact same pattern. The participants with compulsive behaviors said they had a higher desire for the videos, but they didn't necessarily report liking them anymore. There's a neuroscientist, Dr. William Struthers, who came up with this really powerful way to describe it. He called porn a neurological tattoo. I mean, what a metaphor, right? The idea is that this kind of intense new imagery can carve these powerful, lasting memories and pathways in your brain that are just really, really hard to forget or wipe away. So everything we've looked at so far, the brain scans, the wanting versus liking, it all seems to be pointing in one direction, right? It looks a lot like an addiction model. But, and this is a big but, here's where our whole investigation takes a really sharp turn. Because the question is it really addiction? I mean, check out this headline from Psychology Today. It just says it right out there. Science stopped believing in porn addiction. Whoa. That kind of sums up the other side of what is a pretty fierce scientific debate. A lot of people in the scientific community are pushing back, and they're pushing back hard against this whole idea.
And here is a really critical piece of the puzzle. Despite how often we hear the terms porn addiction or porn-induced ED, neither of them are actual official diagnosable conditions in the DSM-5. And that's the big book, the main guide that psychiatrists use. Now, to be fair, the World Health Organization has added something called compulsive sexual behavior disorder to its manual, but that debate over using the word addiction, it is still very much raging.
So this has led researchers to a completely different theory, and it's called moral incongruence. The idea here is that for a lot of people, all the distress, the shame, that feeling of being addicted, it might not be coming from the porn itself. Instead, it could be coming from this intense internal conflict, the feeling you get when you're doing something that goes against your own deep-seated moral or religious beliefs. So, where does that leave us? We've got these strong correlations on one side, some really compelling brain science, but then this massive scientific debate on the other. It feels like we're being pulled in different directions. So let's try to pull all these threads together and see if we can get a clearer, more complete picture. All right, so what's the final verdict here? Well, the most important thing to get is that there is no single, easy answer. It's just not that simple. Instead, what we've really uncovered are 4 big, interconnected takeaways. First, we've learned that the pattern of how someone uses porn is a much stronger predictor of issues than just the sheer amount of time they spend watching. Second, we absolutely cannot ignore the psychological side of things. Performance anxiety, relationship status, those are huge variables. Third, yeah, the brain's reward system can definitely be activated in ways that look a heck of a lot like addiction, driving that wanting and craving. And finally, we have to acknowledge that a person's own values really matter, and that for some, the struggle is all about that internal conflict, that moral incongruence, not the content itself. So in the end, this isn't really about pointing a finger and blaming one single thing for a really complex issue. What all this data really does is push us toward a much bigger, more important question. In this world of just unlimited digital access, how do we help people, especially young people, build the media literacy and the awareness they need to navigate it all and develop a healthy sense of their own sexuality? That, I think, is the real challenge we're facing. Thanks for digging into this with me.